Hi, I'm Ben Richardson, and you're listening to the Karate Podcast, where we talk about karate, the competitive sport of kumite, and the warrior's journey. Brought to you in association with Kumite Coach, the world's first progressive online high-definition coaching platform, created by coaches and fighters for coaches, fighters, and students of karate. Join kumitecoach.com today and take your karate to the next level. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Karate Podcast. I'm really excited to have with me today Satinder Sehra. You'll all know Satinder from the circuit, but he is most recently promoted to 6th degree black belt in Wateroo, so congratulations to him on that. He's a national medalist in his competitive days and has produced a number of high-level students throughout the years who've been on the EKF national team and medaled at the Europeans and the world level. Currently, he's the assistant EKF national team coach. He was most recently coaching at the Senior European Championships, where we picked up numerous medals, including a silver medal at the Senior Kumite. And he also runs a very successful association. He's been trained in a number of martial arts, and it's just a real pleasure to have him on the podcast today. So welcome, Satinder.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. So Satinder, as always, when I'm talking to my guests, if we could just take it back to where it began, how it started, and what kind of got you involved in martial arts.
Okay. So Ben, so if I talk a bit about myself first, in the sense that I'm Sikh, and when my mum and dad came over to England back in the 60s, we were the first Sikhs in the area, and we had a lot of racial tension in the area because there's been a Sikh. We had a BNP headquarters close to us, so no matter where we left or wherever we went, we always got some sort of racial issues. And being small framed, 5 foot, probably 6'5", 60 kg, I was a prime target. And I remember one day when I took my bike out and there's a demonstration of BNP supporters down the road, and they saw me, and I must have been about 10, 11, and they just chased me down the road. And you can imagine how tough. So I drove back to my home. They saw me get into my home, and they were outside my home throwing things and shouting out things. And it was like, wow. And I was scared stiff. I didn't know what to do. My brother and my sister went home. And so these things were sort of all happening around, back in those days. And it wasn't till about, I think I was about 17 or 18. And I took my dog out for a walk. And I always had my headphones on, and I was playing my music, just minding my own business. And I saw this couple walk past me. It was a young lad, young girl. And he kept really looking at me in a real bad way. And I'm thinking, what's his problem? And then I sort of looked back at him. He looked back at me. And I sort of looked back at him. So I was saying, what is this guy's problem? And I just carried on walking now. Back in the day, those days, I had my dog. I had my muzzle on my dog just to make sure that, he's a big old strong Rottweiler. So, I was scared that he would never, he wasn't violent, but people just had that stigma that Rottweilers are dangerous. But so I always had him muzzled. And I carried on walking, and I thought, this kid's a bit weird. This, I really don't like this. And as I carried on walking, next thing you know, it was a sunny day. I felt like it was raining, and I'm thinking, it's not raining. It's, why is my face all wet? And I looked at my hand, and I sort of wiped my brow, like, let's say, it's not raining. And looked at, and it just claret, there's blood on my hand. I'm thinking, what the hell's gone in there? And I'm sitting there thinking, and then I've turned around, and I had no lead in my hand. My dog would run, and my dog was chasing the guy who was looking at me, because what he'd done, he'd pick up a fence post, and because the fence post had like a corner, he'd come from behind and whacked me down the side of the face, and literally took out like 15. I had 15 stitches in my eye, and all I could see was all my skin there was ripped off, and I was like, I've just been whacked. And then I realised what happened. I just started chasing the guy. And as I started chasing the guy, I realized I was bleeding a lot. And then I just collapsed. And I went to one of my friend's houses down the road, and my dog had gone. I didn't know where he was. All I could see was just blood coming out. And when I went to my friend's house, I knocked on his door and I said, I need help, Brian, I need help. And literally, he said, "My God, what's happened?" I said, "I don't know. I've just been attacked." And I laid on the floor. And at that time, then it was the ambulance strike, so we had the army come out. So by the time the army got to me, my mum and dad got to me, I was literally bleeding out. I was coughing out blood. I was bleeding from my ears. I was bleeding from my nose. There's blood just coming from all over my face. And I'm like, wow. And I couldn't even control it. I knew it was coming, but I just didn't know what to do with it.
Mm.
So they got me in the army truck, took me to the hospital, and they'd done 15 stitches in my eye. Um, and when I got out of the hospital, I thought, you know what? I can't keep getting beaten up. I can't keep getting done. I mean, my brother, he was at school beaten up a couple of times. They took his turban off and that. And, my brother's a good lad. He'd fight anybody if he had to, But it just came a point where I thought to myself, I can't keep getting beaten up. I'm the smallest guy. I'm in a predominantly white area, and I've got to stand up for myself now. And I then decided to take up karate. Um, and there's a local club down the road in Malden. It was under Chris Thompson, who's ninth down now. And I just started doing karate there, and I enjoyed it. And then next thing you know, one day turned to 4 days to every single day. And I took up karate. I mean, from what I am now to what I was then, I hate violence. And if anybody says, you know what, you're a black belt and, you can give that guy a dig, no, I don't want to give anybody a dig. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want anyone to hurt me. But the only thing I have now is that I have tools in case I do get hurt. If anybody did want to hurt me, then I think I'd have an idea what to do, or at least how to protect myself. Whereas in the past, I didn't then. And I'd go out with even my mates at night time, would go, because again, we didn't have many Sikh guys or Indian guys, so all my friends were white. We'd go to the pub like you would in the old days. You play a game of darts, you'd have a drink, and I didn't even drink. I didn't smoke, but I'd always go down the pub and have a coke with the lads. And as soon as you walk in, it was always be one guy with a beer in his hand and giving all the, there's a local, whatever there, and let's go and give him a dig. And I used to get so many times sort of picked on, but luckily I had a great bunch of friends, and I mean a great bunch of friends, and they always protected me. But I just couldn't keep getting protected by other people. I had to do something for myself where, even if I do get hurt, fine, but at least I felt like, you know what, I gave it back, and I felt good. Whereas in the past, if you even looked at me the wrong way, I'd crap it, I'd literally run the other way. So, because I'm not a violent person, it's not in my nature. So that's how I sort of got introduced to karate, and I've done, well, I'm still with my sensei in the sense that I still see him today. I've got my own association, but that must be 30 years of training karate now. So yeah. So that was how I got sort of started into karate.
What a terrible reason to have to do martial arts. I mean, how do you feel that early experience kind of formulated your approach to training and your outlook towards what martial arts could give you?
I'll be honest with you. I don't really know. I don't even know if I can answer that, because at that time I just wanted to learn to punch and kick. I'll be honest with you, I had so much anger at me. I just wanted to hurt somebody for what they did to me. And the only way I could sort of get that out was to get it out through karate. But then I realized karate was teaching the opposite. And it was like, actually, this isn't teaching me to hurt people. This is teaching me to get where I need to get to mentally and be in a place where I'm comfortable and I can almost hold my own without having to hurt people. So in other words, when I got hurt back then, I was in a rage. I just wanted to learn how to punch and kick. And if anybody come near me, I just wanted to knock them out. And it's like, no, I'm not, I've got to pay a few people back now. And then I thought, no, this is the good thing about what karate taught me. It's actually, you don't need to do that. What you need to do is be confident in yourself, become who you are, find out your inner peace, and then basically transform that and translate that into every day. And now, look, if somebody comes up to me, I'm still going to crap it. I'm not going to lie and say, yeah, I'll take him down and I'll do that. I'll put him in a choke and I'll, no, I won't. I will probably crap it out. The next man will do. And anybody says they wouldn't, I'm sure they're lying. But you know what, for me, at least I know if anybody did hit me, then I know straight away my body would say to me, right, that's the first thing to do. That's the second thing to do. And that's something that I am I got out of karate, the fact that I could almost plan ahead what I wanted to do. So I took that into life in the sense that what I wanted to do, everything was a goal. Everything had to be a meaning. There had to be something behind what I did. It wasn't just a case of doing it because I can do it. It was actually doing it, and why am I doing it? And this will translate later when I sort of explain into my karate career. So,
Yeah.
I hope that sort of answers that question.
Yeah,
Probably
absolutely.
doesn't.
No, it does. It does. And one of the things I'm going to touch on later is around how this might have impacted the way you coach as well, because I'm sure that
Yeah.
these experiences do. But right now, so you started karate in Waterloo. I presume it was a traditional club where you did
Yeah.
Kion Kata and Kumite.
Yeah. So Chris Thompson was a very good sport fighter, but he didn't allow us to do a lot of training outside, i.e., it had to be traditional based and his sort of style. So we'd have one competition a year, the BTKA, and everything was all traditional. And to be honest with you, people see me as more of a sport coach, but actually 90% of what I teach is traditional. So we do every single day, we do Kion, Kata, and Kumite. And if you break it down, if I break down the hours, it'd probably be 20 minutes Kion, probably 15, 20 minutes pairs or gumités, and probably 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes kata, and probably 10 minutes if I'm allowed kumite. And I still teach that to this day. And then I have special separate classes for kumite. But yes, it was a very traditional based organization, and I continued to do the traditional based first and foremost. And I think that you have to do that. In fact, the only other people that I felt were traditionally based were probably at the top of the game was the KUGB, because they are based solely on traditional. You know, when I coach KUGB fighter or JK fighter, I know their basics are good. Now, trying to get them to move into the sports side of things is another thing, but I know that they can punch, I know they can kick, and I know they can hold the stances. And that to me as a coach is very good to teach. So I insist that no matter whether you sport or not, you have to do traditional. And I teach, as I say, 90% of my classes are mainly all traditional first.
Yeah. That's I think that's one of the debates in sports karate is whether you need to have this traditional background, because I'm from a Shotokan, and we have a strong belief in kata, kion, and kumite, and like we have a pyramid where the base of the pyramid is the kion, the next layer is the kata, and like the pinnacle is the kumite. So those elements of coordination, mental focus, attention to detail that those basics will bring, is driven towards helping people reach maybe a higher level of ability in kumite. I'm not saying that's the only way you have to do it, but I think that there's definitely a value to that.
I think you're so right. And I think, to be honest with you, when I have students come to national training, I know if they're good basics or not, because straight away I can see if there's a hip movement twist, if there's a low knee stance, if their hikite is pulled back, if their zanishin is correct, have they thrown the correct mawashigeri? Is it just a lazy kick or lazy drop? So, I mean, everything that I see for me is first and foremost is traditional. It has to be traditional. And there's a lot of arguments on Facebook and whatever. Traditional is works on the street and sport doesn't. I mean, to me, that's a load of nonsense. And I hate people when they say things like that, because they've not been punched by the likes of Wayne Otto, Willie Thomas, Vic Charles, Merv, these kind of guys. They're traditionalists, but you know what? They'll outspeed you and outpunch you and out knock you out in 2 seconds. So, you know what? When I hear these comments, I get really angry, and it's like, you know what? For me, tradition is there, sport is there, and you need traditional. So to be a good sportsman, you need traditional. To be a good traditionalist, you don't need the sport. That's whether you choose to do it.
Yeah.
But saying that, sorry, sorry, I lost my thought. But going back to what I was saying, was traditional for me has to be first and foremost, and you build on that. And then as a coach, as I say, it's easy for me to teach a good traditionalist than somebody who can punch and kick, but actually doesn't know the basics well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So within your traditional background, what led you into sports karate? Obviously had your annual kind of tournament within the association.
Yeah.
But then to step outside of that, I know coming over from the KUGB into the JKS, to much more, there's much more opportunity to compete within sports karate through the EKF. And I remember the first season in particular, it was like, wow, what is this? It was so different. And then to realize the level that you'd have to reach to get up, into those top tiers, it was quite staggering. So how was that transition for you, and what happened in that period?
Yeah. So, wow, what a question. Because basically we were traditionally, so we weren't allowed to go outside, because in those days, Ben, people would be taking students and it'd be like, so my sense, it was very much, no, this is the road, you do it my way. And that's it. I said, okay. And I respect him for that. And I've got all love for him. So, but then he said, so I want you to go to the English Championships. I want to put you in the English Championships -60. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I've won the BTK National Championship, so let's have a bit of this. Not thinking anything that, I was out of my league, and I was way out of my league. And I went there thinking, well, I'll have some of this. And I won my first fight. And then I was beating at the English Championships, Milo Hodge. And he'd, bear in mind, this guy, he was like literally ripping everybody apart in the world. And I was beating him 2-0, and he's looking at me thinking, do you know what? What is this guy about? And I'm sitting there thinking, this is all right. Yeah, everyone's talking about Milo Hodge like he's the most amazing man. And I'm doing him 2-0, and it's about 30 seconds into the fight. I've just got lost another probably a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and I'm there. How hard could this be? What a stupid thought I had then, because he just literally raised the game up, and his coach obviously got, I can't remember his coach, but he got a bit annoyed with him, and he just literally axe kicked me in the face, swept me, and it was over by about a minute. So yeah, and it's like, and I got off the mat in Ben, and I thought, what the hell just happened there? And I'm like, and he just walked off, shook my hand, and said, nice one, mate. Walked off, and I thought, okay, yeah, fair enough. And then somebody said to me, goes, do you know you just fought? And I said, no, well, he's just won the Paris Open and this and that. And in those times, the Paris Open was the nuts. It was like, if you won there, you won. You were the man.
Yeah.
And it's really funny, because when I got there, I thought, you know what, I really like this. But I then realised my age, and I was 29.
Mm-hmm.
So I was fighting guys 18, 19, 20 in their prime, and I'm 10 years older than them. And I've never competed outside of my own style. So these guys have had, they were born into it. They were 4, 5, 6 years old. I was starting competing at that age, and I'm 30 nearly, and I've just started getting my first English Championships. So I did get, okay, so to be honest with you, I got 2 by default bronze medals, and I'm not going to turn around and say I won them fair and square, because I didn't. I won them because they broke my nose in both occasions, and they got disqualified. So I'll take the medals. I'll be honest with you, I'll take the medals. But because I still believe now that I'm very proud that I stood up and got it. Because when I realised the level of fighters that were there, I'm thinking to myself, wow, there was Paul Newby, there was Milo Hodge, there was about 4 or 5 fighters. I could see their faces, I just can't remember their names, but they were all at their time peak. Jason Ledgers were all there, and you're thinking, wow, I'm going to get battered. But you know what? I really enjoyed it, because I was fast. I could match them for speed. But when I punched, I was punching with a traditional punch. And these guys were in, out, bang, Kazami Yak. And I'm thinking, okay, I know Kazami Yak, but I don't know the way you do your Kazami Yak. My Kazami Yak is standing still and just punching 1, 2. Their Kazami Yak, bang, bang, in and out. And I'm thinking, right now, I haven't been taught that. And so then I really liked that. And I realised, actually, I need to do more sports. And I didn't even think about coaching, Ben. I didn't even think about the coaching side. I thought, I just want to learn about sports. And I met a young 14-year-old Alton Brown. And this kid was wiping the floor with everybody at the time. And I thought, you know what? He's only 14. I need to talk to him, but I don't want to talk to him because he's a young kid. And, who am I?
Yeah.
And I said, excuse me, mate. I said, what's your name? He said, Alton Brown. I said, mate, I think you're phenomenal. I just think you're rapid. I don't know what you're doing, but you are wiping the floor with everybody. And he said to me, goes, hey, I'm all. And I said, where'd you train? And he said, I train in London, Bethnal Green. You can come down and train with us. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. So we got a really good relationship. And then I started really enjoying it. And again, I was getting battered, Ben. I was in my early 30s, 31 now and whatever. And I'm getting battered by these guys, but I loved it. I just love going. to the point that I trained with Terry Daly on a Friday, Joe Anderson on a Thursday, Wayne Alto on a Wednesday. And bear in mind, I'm in Surrey, so it would take me 2 hours to get there.
Yeah.
Then I'd get battered for an hour and a half by all these guys and these youngsters, and then another 2 hours back. And I'd do that four times a week. But I just loved it. I just loved it. And I thought, you know what? I'm getting a buzz of getting beaten up. And so then I thought to myself, how do I do sport without, how do I do what I love, but I'm too old for it? I just looked at myself and I could start seeing the old grey hair popping out. Oh dear, you know what I mean? Why didn't I do this earlier? And I thought, you know what? And then my sensei said, "Sat, open your own club." And I'm like, don't really want to do that. I enjoy karate. I don't enjoy teaching. Well, it's not I didn't enjoy teaching. I'd never really done a lot of teaching. So it wasn't my forte. My forte was to train hard and do what I love. I like being told. So Ben, if you said to me, "Sat, we're doing a jiu-jitsu class, we're going to do this, we're going to do that," I'll be like, "Great, tell me what to do. I want to learn. Yeah. Whereas if you said, "Sat, teach me," I'll be like, what do I want to teach her? It doesn't excite me as much, if that makes sense. So I was like, no, I don't want to do it. But he said, no, you've got to do it. I want you to open a club in Kingston. And I said, okay. So I opened my first club, and I'll tell you the story of that in a second, but on 9/11, on the day of 9/11. Wow. So, and that wasn't by choice. That wasn't planned. That was, I'd done all the advertisement a month early and everything. And then 9/11 came. It was the day of my opening my club. So, but going back to your question, that's how I got involved in sport, because once I'd lost the English, I realised I really loved it and I wanted to learn more. And it was just more for me, really. It was just more that I could actually start being a sport fighter, even at an older age. But I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. So, yeah, that's how I got into the sports side of things.
Yeah, fantastic.
Getting battered, basically.
Yeah, I think we've shared quite a similar path in that. I think my first EKF tournaments even were when I was about 36, 37.
Wow.
I didn't start competing until I was 26 or 7.
Well, yeah, well done, mate.
You know, so my whole focus was always just to represent my association's national squad, which you know, I achieved when I moved into the JKS. But that driver to, you know, I was traveling up to Leeds from Oxford, so it's a 3.5 hour, 3-hour journey up there, training with Matt Price for his Kumite class, drive back.
Legend. Yeah.
You know, and doing that for a number of years, getting across to seminars where I could with Paul Newby or Matt Price. You know, and just that drive to improve and to learn more about this other side of karate that I'd been exposed to late in my, you know, career, because being a traditionalist, and I'm not saying that it was derived by the KUGB, but for me, until I left, the whole world of karate was just the KUGB. Nothing outside it existed, and if it did, it wasn't really worth knowing about.
And do you know what, Ben? I think our stories are so exact, so similar, because I was in this sort of vision of the BTKA, and that was the style, and that was the only style, and you couldn't do anything else. And as soon as I got outside of that, I thought, I like this. And so exactly like you, I think our paths are exactly the same.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah. And I know that you're also been involved in other martial arts along your career, as have I. Yeah. So was karate the first thing that came into play, or was there stuff at the same time, or as you progressed?
So that's a good question. So it's funny, now I'm teaching and I see kids come and go, and when they go, they think, oh yeah, he liked it, but it's not for him. And I'm thinking, all right, whatever, no problem for me. You know, in my heart, I'm thinking, oh, that's a shame. You know, I've lost more students. I want to keep them, but obviously. But I did that as well, Ben. When we got, as I say, back in those days, it was quite a hotbed for racial issues there. So mum and dad sent us to, and I so regret it. I just so regret it. She sent us to Neville Ray. Mm-hmm. And if you know Neville Ray, he's one of the greatest fighters in Kung Fu ever. And he used to beat the English karateka badly back in those days. So I remember Chris Thompson once said to me, my sensei, he said, he goes, Neville Ray was brutal. This guy was an animal. And I'm thinking, Neville Ray? I was trained by him. But when you're young, you're 6, 7. Well, I was probably 6, 7, actually, that's rubbish. I was probably about 10 years old. But, it was like, oh, this is too much hard effort, too much hard effort. And it was like, no. And I gave up like the kids do in the clubs nowadays. But had I known what I actually had in my hand, I had gold. I had
Mm.
gold with Neville Ray. Neville Ray was one of the greatest fighters. And he had Kevin Bruton, all those fighters at the club. And these guys were like legends. I mean, they're like the Vic Charles, the Merv Etienne's, the Wayne Ottos of today, Willie Thomas's. That's what he was
Yeah.
back in those days. And I didn't really realise till afterwards when my sensei said Neville Ray, and he mentioned these names, and I then heard at seminars these guys were animals, and I'm thinking, wow, how stupid was I? So my karate started, or my career started off with Liao Gao Kung Fu, although it was only probably a year. I got up to green sash. So I can't really say that was anything I did properly. Then I went to karate. Following that, I went into a bit of MMA with London Street Fighters. I've done 4 to 5 years with these guys in Hammersmith. That was, like I said to you earlier, it was brutal. It was literally just going to the lion's den. And I loved training with these guys. And I loved training with guys that in those times were superstars. So I think if you can remember that, I can't remember his second name. But there's a guy who's on a famous show. His name's Alex. I think he married Katie Price or one of the
Alex Reed, was it?
Reed. Yeah,
Yeah.
Alex Reed, and
Yeah.
he was there, and he was trained. So we had these guys. I had James Haskin, the rugby national coach back
Yeah.
then, with
Yeah.
legs.
Yeah.
His legs were wider than my hips. I mean, they were huge. And the funny thing about it, Ben, was he came in late one day, and it was so funny. And little Alex, one of the coaches there, he said, "Why are you late, James?" He said, "Sorry, Sensei, I've got traffic." And he goes, "I don't give a crap what you've got." He goes, "Get your gear off, get on that bag, get working now." And he said, "Before you do that, give me 100 press ups right now." And James Haskin is like 6'10". He's a monster. He's got legs this wide, And I'm like,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Oh, Sensei." And he just went in the corner and done it. And I'm like, oh my dear, this guy's just so. But those days were great. I mean, I
Yeah.
learned a lot, but I didn't learn the basics, and I needed to learn the basics. So I then joined Northern Monkey Jiu-Jitsu, and I've been 8 years doing that. I'm purple belt in that, and I've done also training, coaching at Surbiton ABA Boxing Club. So they brought me in to help the guys work their footwork. So yeah, I really enjoyed that as well. So, but I wanted to kick. I wanted
Yeah.
to use my kicks, and they told me
Yeah.
not to. I couldn't kick a boxer in the head. I'm like, oh, just once, and no. So they're my 4 styles. So I've done all 3 styles really: BJJ, boxing, and karate.
Fantastic. And have you found that having an awareness and experience in other martial arts has influenced your coaching in the traditional side of things, or even the
Yeah,
competitive?
yeah, definitely. And just like say for instance with BJJ, that's probably the most other than karate that I've sort of done sport. They teach me a lot of things like connection and closing down, and not letting any uh, literally I can't remember the word I'm using, but basically keep everything tight and keep it clean. Don't be, rushing and making big jumps and big leaps, and everything has to be methodical. So when I do my
Yeah.
karate now, I teach it in that way. I teach it everything right. Okay, you're key on. So to give an example, to use that as an example for karate, we have the traditional Japanese way of teaching, and we have the Okinawan way of teaching. And I try and say to them, like, okay, this is how we do it. The traditional Japanese, it's got to be the how. It's got to be correct. Everything's got to be correct. There's the Okinawans where we didn't care if it was correct. The end result is that.
Yeah.
And so when jiu-jitsu sort of taught me a lot of things, it was like actually that step was the Japanese way of doing things, but actually the end result would be that. And then you start changing things to get rid of 1 and 2, and you go straight to 3 and 4 points. So you cut corners. So that really helped me with the karate side of things, and not so much with the sport, but more the traditional side of things. It sort of it made me analyze everything as like a set sequence rather than just, well, you punch because I'm telling you to punch. It's like, well, why do you punch? How do you punch? Is there a better way to punch? Is there a quicker way to punch? And then I sort of started understanding in the sports side of things, they do a lot of things different that I'm starting to pick up straight away. They're doing that. And okay, now we can change, even the traditional side of things, make them faster now. So whilst keeping the traditional side of things. So yeah, they all the sports definitely helped in their own way. Even boxing, keeping your guard up and how they moved and ducked and slipped. So now in the sports side of things, that really is a big thing. Instead of blocking, they all slip it down. They ride the punches rather than the traditional
Sure.
just block strong. You know, they're doing all of this and sort of slipping and sliding. And
Yeah.
so yeah, each style did help in some way.
Yeah, great. So let's just take it back to your transition from being a competitor and like the focus around you as a participant or student of karate into becoming a coach. How did that affect you in terms of your focus towards karate, and did it have a big impact on your goals at that time?
So okay, so my desire then was still because I had like you, mate. You know, when you start late in the sport, you think I've got unfinished business here. I need to finish this business off, and I can't do it. I'm too old. I'm going to get battered. So how can I do that? So when I started my club, I had no intention of doing sport. I just intended to do a club, small club, because my sensei told me, and go home. And that was it. And anyway, I started my first club off on day of 9/11, and that is a terrifying day for me because I was really, really excited. Um, and by the end of the evening, being a Sikh, being wearing a turban, we're having a beard, you know, straight away people sort of said, well, he's a terrorist. He's got to be one of them lot. So the evening went from like a high to a low.
Mm.
And then I had my first student walk in, Sam. And again, that's a horrendous story. I've got so many stories I can't even tell you, Sam, but Ben, but I'll tell you this one about little Sam. You know, he was my first student, and he went out and went on holiday, and he was swimming and almost drowned. His mum went out and saved him. She almost drowned. The father went out, saved them both, but he did drown.
Oh my God.
So when Sam came back to the club, I'm like, and I heard the story, I'm like, God, this is my first student on 9/11. This was a couple of weeks after I'd opened the club. I'd heard that his dad drowned. I'm like, I don't want this. I do not want to coach. If this is what life is about, and I'm going to hear these kind of stories, I don't want to coach. But my heart told me I need to get back on that mat and fight. And I thought, okay, do you know what? Let's go and do a few competitions. So I started doing a few competitions with a few of the kids. And we're getting some decent results. I'm thinking, do you know what? This is okay. I'm quite enjoying this. And then we started building up a bigger squad, a better squad. And we started doing really well locally. And then I took them all to the English. And we started winning a lot of English results. I'm thinking, do you know what? We're not a bad old club here. You know, I'm quite enjoying this because I almost felt like I was fighting with the kids. So when the kids were fighting, it was me fighting. It was my way of getting out what I could have got out many years ago, but I just started off late.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to learn more. I wanted to get better. So I trained under Wayne Otto, Terry Daly. These guys were phenomenal. And the results started getting more and more and more. And I started having like a team of about 20 fighters and cutter. And they all started representing England. And I really started thinking, you know what, I'm really enjoying this. I'm really, really enjoying this. But there was no sort of like, my set was, I want to be a coach and I want to be this, I want to be that. If you said to me 20 years on sat, you're going to have this, you're going to be in this position, I would have laughed at you. And I'd be like, you know what, that ain't even going to happen. You're talking to the wrong person. You've got the wrong guy here. But the progression naturally happened, I think, more because I had unfinished business and I needed to let it out. And that translated from my teaching and what I've learned, not just in karate, but as you say, BJJ, boxing, all those things. I took it to the table and I brought it to my students. And I remember one of the biggest wins we'd had was we took 6 fighters to the English. We've done I took 7 fighters to the English and we got 6 golds. We won 6 categories. Wow. And it was like, and we were number 2, I think, at the top of the table with 7 fighters, and that's all we had. That was all we had. And it was just like, wow, you know, there's some big old names there, some big old clubs there, and you're thinking, we're just going to wipe everybody out here. But I loved the winning. I hate losing. I just love winning. And that was my way of getting it out, but with a younger version in front of me. Yeah.
Right. And then what was the transition from club coach moving into, ultimately the national coaching side of things? Okay,
so I remember at the English, Greg Francis who was the assistant national coach, and I didn't know this at the time. My guys were doing really well that day, and he said to me, he goes, I want a word with you, young man. He goes, are you sat? And I said, yeah. And he goes, do you know who I am? And obviously, it was Greg Francis. And if you know Greg Francis, he's a legend. But I was actually too scared to even say his name. And I said, no. And he looked at me as though to say, no, you don't know. And I'm like, yeah, I do, but I don't know what to say to you. And I just froze. And he said, I'll tell you what. He said, you'll know my name in a minute. Way upstairs. And I'm like, what's that about? So I'm looking around thinking, what's his problem? And he said, go in the corridor, way upstairs. And I'm thinking, okay. He said, I went up the stairs and he said, Wayne, and this is so true, Ben, this is the funniest thing now, but at that time it was terrifying. He said, Wayne, Merv, Ian, follow him. And the Tony twins were there and they all walked up behind me. And I'm thinking, what the hell's going on here? So they took me in the corridor at the back. And I remember it really vividly. And Greg still talks about it today. And I'm waiting in the room and they're all just looking. They've got like this friend. They're all like that, looking at me. Just like that. There's no one saying a word. They're just looking at me, staring at me. And I'm thinking, oh, crap. And I'm sitting there thinking, and then we're in a circle. And I'm thinking, how the hell? What the hell am I doing here first? And why are these guys looking at me the way they're looking at me?
Yeah.
And then Greg walks through the door and he goes, you're sat. He goes, do you know who I am? I'm going to ask you the question again. I said, yeah, you're Sensei Francis. He said, that's right, I am. He said, I'm the assistant national coach. And he said, do you know who these guys are? And I said, yes, I do. And obviously, Wayne Otto standing there. And you know what Wayne's like? He's got those shark eyes and he just looks at you like that. And you think, oh, crap, I can't even look at the bloke. I can't even stare at the guy. And I'm looking around. I've got Ian Cole, who's about 10 foot tall. I've got the Tony twins standing there like that. And I'm thinking, oh, Christ. And I'm like, my butt is going, my lip is going, my butt is going. I'm thinking, oh, Christ. And he goes, do you know why I brought you up here? And I said, no, Sensei. He goes, right, I'll tell you why I brought you up here. Because every single one of you shake this man's hand. And I'm like, and I'm looking around thinking, shake his hand. And they all shook my hand. And I've got my hand out like this, Ben. Instead of going like, yeah, I'm sat. I was like I was shaking. And they all shook my hand. And he goes, and I want all of you guys to know this is the kind of coach we want, because every single person that I've looked for the national squad have come from this guy's club. And I want you guys to shake his hand because that's the quality we want in England. So I want to thank you personally, Sat, and I want you to know that I'm very grateful for what you're producing. Keep doing what you're doing. Now off you go.
Wow.
And Ben, I literally, I don't know what I did after that. I just knew that I wasn't even in the, I didn't know what. So if somebody said to me, Sat, I've just lost my first round, or Sat, I've just won the gold, I'll be like, yeah, whatever. Because I was like, what the hell has just gone on there? It's one of those moments where you just, you're in shock of what's just happened. And I was in shock. And that's how my sort of career started. So as we started doing well with the fighters, Greg then said to me, so then I got promoted as to assistant regional coach back in 2017. And I thought, wow, this is the pinnacle. I'm even happy to be an assistant regional coach because that to me was a big name. I mean, you had guys that are top coaches in those days, including Paul Newby, including Matt Price, and that. You think these guys are, so me being down here, I'm happy with that. I'll listen to these guys. I want to learn. I want to understand. So, I'm good with that. And then I then got asked, so I think Paul Newby couldn't go to the Commonwealths and nor could Rory Daniels at the time. And I think I was asked to go by Paul Newby and Greg. They said, right, national coaches can't go. We want you to go to the Commonwealths. So it's in South Africa. You're going to take the senior squad and you're going to go coach them at the Commonwealths. Now, bear in mind, Ben, I've sort of been an assistant regional coach for about a year. Yeah. And I'm now taking the senior squad, like the likes of Joe Kellaway, Carla Burkett, Amelia, who else was there? Natalie Payne and Amelia, Kate, Carla and Joe. Yeah, and Natalie Payne. So I've got the best of the best with me. And I'm thinking, I am absolutely crapping my pants. I've got legend fighters and I've got to go out there and take them to the Commonwealth Championships in South Africa.
Yeah.
get everything organised, get them on the mat, get the results. Anyway, Greg was out there with me, and so was Steve Copeland, who's the head of delegation, so was Billy Brennan. And we went out there, and with God's grace, we've done really, really well. You know, we got 4 out of 5 goals. And and we got there because of the hard work and everything that we've done. We really got the game plan on point, and I was really, really happy. And when there's a bit like that Greg moment, Ben, it was like, did that just happen? Did we just get 4 goals? And bear in mind, people say, you know, the Commonwealth is not as good as the Europeans or the Worlds, but you know what? You still have to beat a lot of fighters. And a lot of the fighters that are at the Worlds were at the Commonwealth. So they were highly ranked fighters. And I remember one of the competitors saying, Sat, he's really good. And, you know, I'm going to have trouble with him. I'm thinking, right, okay, well, we'll worry about that when we get to it. And we did. We finished him off well. But the point is that that was the biggest thing I'd ever sort of been asked to do, ever. Well, I've gone from an assistant national coach. Well, I've gone from a club coach, normal club coach, to an assistant regional coach to national coach. And I'm like, so the transition wasn't even like assistant, head regional, assistant England, national coach. It was like from there to there. So I sort of jumped 2 spots, which I shouldn't have never done really. But the result came, and Steve and Greg were really, really proud and said, look. And then I was asked to do the Team GB universities based on what we did at the Commonwealths. And that went really, really well. We got our first silver medalist in a long time. And the team around and everything they were so happy. They were really, really happy. So he said, I want you to be the Team GB universities coach now. Because I've seen what you've done at Commonwealths, I've seen what you've done at GB University. So we want you to continue that role, hence why I'm going next month. And then the recent one, Sensei Junior Leverve, he couldn't make the training because he had a hospital appointment. And they said, Sat, you're the assistant national coach now. And we want you to go in as replacement. I said, yeah, no problem. Not thinking anything of it, but I believed in the 3 fights we had. And there were 3 young lads that had never done senior competition. I think one of them did team, but the rest of the other 2 had never done senior fighting.
Yeah.
And again, everything we did I think was on point. The pre-training was good. I mean, bear in mind, all I'm doing is coaching. They've done the hard work. It's not really me that's got them there. It's their coaches and their themselves. But as regards to the preparation, as regards to doing what we had to do on the day and throughout the week, we managed to beat the Olympic champion in the semi-final and go on to get a silver medal in the final against the hometown. And everybody expected us, or thought we'd all go out. Not expected us, I should say, but they would have thought, being new lads, being senior level first round, maybe lucky if they get the second round. And we literally just, especially Brandon, he was amazing, but Jed was phenomenal. And I saw something in Jed that he's taken away to the juniors and come back now a medalist.
Yeah, fantastic.
And Ethan Days, you know, I said to him, you know, you have the ability, and apparently he was fighting amazing. He just fell asleep on one of the points. But we had our first Olympic silver medalist, first silver medalist, European champion for at least 5 to 6 years or something. So I think Jordan was the last one. But by that, before Jordan, you know, you're talking a long
Joe
time.
Calloway medalled.
Joe Calloway got a bronze. Yeah, he got a bronze, I think. So it's the first silver we got for a long, long time. A long time.
Yeah.
And Joe's a phenomenal fighter as well. But Brandon, for his first outing as a senior, to go out and beat the Olympic champion in semi-finals.
Yeah.
You know,
amazing.
you'd never thought of that. So
I interviewed Brandon last week, and we obviously talked about that in detail because it's obviously a huge event, and real great insight from him, and what a nice young lad he is as well.
Superb, absolute gentleman, and he does his talk on the mats. That's what I like about Brandon. He doesn't say a lot off the mats, but he says a lot on the mats, and he's probably one of the fastest fighters I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, he's a bullet.
He is a bullet, absolute bullet. Yeah, 100%.
So one of the things I'm quite interested in, being a coach myself and having lots of influences, who are the people who've influenced you as a coach, and that you learn from, for me, Matt Price has been a huge influence on my own
Yeah,
coaching.
yeah,
Paul Newby's
yeah,
been an influence on me in more
yeah,
recent times.
yeah,
And I've had coaches over the years, but I think, Matt's definitely, the main figure that I've
yeah,
drawn my information from. So I'd be
yeah,
interested to discover
yeah.
your
So,
influences.
so like you, my biggest influence is probably Julian Levert.
Yeah.
I trained with Junior 20 years ago, and I've been his friend for 20 years. So once I started learning the sports side of things, I realised quickly that Europeans were taking everybody apart, and I had to get in touch with somebody who I felt was bringing. So first, I need to understand the English way of fighting. So and what we're doing. Then I realised that we were getting beaten a lot by the Europeans at the time. So after the days of Dav and Paul and that, we had a sort of a lull with fighters. We had the odd occasional win, we had the odd occasional champion, and that was great. But it wasn't consistent like it was back in the old days. And then I realised the Europeans had changed the game a lot. So Junior Lever for me was the guy that I went to. And I think I was the first English guy to train over there. This was back in, well, it must be 20 years ago. So the early 2000s, probably late 1990s. But
Yeah.
I started understanding what he did and how the European way of fighting. Hence, what I actually learned from him is what I brought to my students. So we do the English way of fighting, but when we go to the English, we do the European way of fighting. So we changed the way we fought.
Yeah.
So when we fought then, it was like alien to some of those guys. So we were picking them off quite easily. Not easily, I wouldn't say easily, actually. That's just a little bit arrogant. But we were beating them with things that they didn't know because they weren't taught the European way. And I didn't know. I only knew it when I went out there and sort of learned from Junior. And he said, no, try this, try this, try this. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. Now that makes sense. The likes of Matt Price, again, one thing I've realized being with COVID, it gave me real good insight to watch seminars and how people coach. So even to this day, I will still watch instructors and I'll go on the Zoom seminars just to see how they teach and what they teach. In fact, you mentioned George Kataka earlier. I used to watch all his videos. I used to think technically that man is superb.
Yeah,
he's absolutely, he's so elegant, so elegant.
Yeah.
And I used to watch his committee videos and seminars. Matt Price used to watch his, Willie Thomas's. There's so many different people that you could learn from. And it was so good. But my main inspiration really came from Junior Levert. Yeah.
That's great. And as you mentioned, like there was a stylistic or a difference in the Europeans and the English fighters that you were coaching. How do you? It seems to me now like we were riding a wave that's been hard grafted, but the fighters that we're producing now as a nation do seem to be winning at a higher level, but there seems to be a greater depth coming through the cadets, the juniors into the seniors. What are your thoughts around how British karate is starting to move now?
Yeah, I think it's starting to move in the right direction now. And I think under the leadership of Junior, I think we're getting the right. So again, having a foreign coach is really good because he can bring the European way of fighting to the juniors now. So that's the first thing. So he's changing that mindset. Guys, this is what you used to do, but this is how we're going to do it now. What he loves is the old way of the English traditional. So to give an example, he loves the old Kazami, drive it in hard. When you got your Wayne Ottos and your Mervs and Willies and whatever, these guys were just drilling yaks to take out your stomach. They weren't even getting a point. They were just going to hurt you. And Molly Sams, all these, So he likes that thought process, but things have changed now, Ben. So everything now is done speed and fluent as opposed to the old way of just stand there, give a dig, take it back, and now who's quick. So his influence, I think, is really, really now changing the mindset of the youngsters. And I think that's now starting to come through with 4 medalists at the Junior Europeans. We've got 1 senior medalist. Bear in mind, we only took 3 people at seniors. So to come out in the final with one of those is a fantastic rate, So I can now see the change in the juniors and the cadets. And also what Jim's asked is he brings kids in at a younger age. So you really start training at 14. Well, when you go to 14 at the England training, you're going to actually compete in the cadets at 14. Yeah. And he's saying, no, he said, I want them in at 12 years of age. get them in early so I can work 2 years. So when they get to 14, we could start now getting results, because what I don't want to do is get to 14 and they've had the inexperience. And the only time they actually get experience is when they really hit junior age, which is another 2 years later. But he goes, they're not there to get experience. They should be doing what they're doing 2, 3 years earlier.
Yeah.
By the time they get to me at 14, they should be ready to rock and roll and get medals. So we can progress them into the juniors, progress them into the under 18, under 21s, and then eventually into the seniors. So the mindset and how he's changed everything has been, I think it's now starting to show through, because we're getting medals in most of the tournaments we're doing now, which is good. We just need to do that on a consistent level. We need to do that with more categories. So, in the past, we've always tried to keep as many fighters as we can, but now it's like, you know what, we'll take a select few, and in certain categories, we'll add a few if we think they've got potential. But other than that, we're only going to take people that we know now that we can get results with. And obviously, if there's certain categories, you think, you know what, I see potential, let's give them a go, or give her a go. We're like, yeah, let's chuck them in the deep end. Let's see if they swim.
Yeah, that's great. I'm interested to sort of just touch on briefly your opinion of the challenges that fighters are facing who want to succeed at that higher level. I think, obviously they need access to that high level competition, but I think most of the fighters, if not all of them, are self-funded. Yeah. What challenges do you feel are the main ones that are holding our talent back, and what would you like to see in terms of addressing those challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ben. Do you know what? It's really hard for me to sit and say, you know what? It's a really hard question, because really, you and I know that to be fighting at elite level, you have to travel, you have to compete abroad. To do that, you need funding, and we don't get funded. The EKF is a non-profit organisation. I certainly sometimes think, and I've got to sort of bite my lip a little bit, but I sometimes think that we could do a little bit more to help these guys. And I think with the seniors, they're starting to do that now. They're starting to fund them to go away to the Europeans and the Worlds. But the point is it's more about not just funding them on one occasion, funding them to help get to maybe a K1, a youth league, get them to have that experience overseas. But I also then think about back in the 80s, it wasn't funded then properly either. So when these guys were world champions, a lot of them was self-funded as well. Yes, they got to a point where they got a bit of funding, but generally it was a self-funded sport. So what's the difference between then and now? The only difference is the sport has changed. So what they did those days has changed these days. So there's a lot more sports science behind what we're doing today. Yeah. And to do that costs money, and to understand that and to train with coaches that, it's all cost. So in some ways, I feel really, really sorry, and I feel really sort of like sympathetic. But on another way, anybody that comes into karate knows it's pretty much a self-funded sport. So either they're going to get into something where they know they will have to dig deep in their pockets. Other than that, I do think that the governing bodies could do a lot more. I really do. I really do. How they do it, I don't know. But I do feel sorry for a lot of the fighters. But on the same terms, when I went into karate, I knew it's self-funded. You pay everything yourself. Everything's. You want it, you get it. We're not going to pay for you. And unfortunately, because we're not lottery funded and sport funded, it's not like we've got 100 grand in the bank that you could say, or 200-300 grand in the bank, or whatever it is. I don't know. That we can say, like, there you go, use that. So yeah.
I think, there's obviously a greater structural issue there, where on one side our governing body is a non-profit organisation, so that makes it a lot harder then to treat it as a business, which would be the ideal format to generate money. In order to produce a national squad that could be fully funded, like an entire squad, have a process of funding that people could go through as they progress through different levels of the squad structure, from regional right through to national. That would be probably.
And you know what we did say, Ben, some of the things were like, depending on how well you are and what you're rated as in your ranking, you can go, we sort of propose these kind of things to say, look, if they're ranked at number, say, 10, 11, they get X amount of money. If they're ranked at number 2 or number 1, they get more money.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of things that we propose and put forward. But like you say, yeah, it's a really tough one without sort of getting really political. And I don't like getting political. I'd like to see the governing bodies do a lot more for the kids. I really do. It's not coach's job. It's not anybody else's job. It's really their jobs to help. You know, if they're going to represent England at that level, they should be helping out there. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's a shame, but yeah, unfortunately, we are in this unfunded sport.
Yes. So let's move on then. So, what are some of the goals that you have for yourself as a club coach, and just as a coach to the national side of things as well? Are they aligned? Yeah. Are they different? What's left to achieve? What's sort of the top thing on your hit list right now?
To be honest with you, Ben, as I say, if you said to me 20 years ago, mate, you'd be doing this job, that job, I would have laughed at you. So I just see every day as a blessing. And I think whatever the path the good man's given me and the good lady's given me, it's like, you know what, I'll take whatever I've got. And I'm not even worried about where I want to be, where I don't want to be. I just want to be happy. And if that means coaching at club level, I'll coach at club level. If that means coaching at national level, I mean, bear in mind, national level does come with a lot of headaches. It's nice to be at that top level coaching, but it does come with a lot of headaches. And sometimes I can't be bothered with those headaches. It's like, you know what? I didn't do this for this. And this is where, we talk about politics. You know, I don't like getting involved in politics, but when you're at that sort of level, you will obviously be involved in politics. And then, so to me, I never sit here and say, well, that's where I want to be. That's my goal. That's what's going to happen. I just literally let every day happen. And if it happens to be this day things change, then it changes. And if it doesn't, then I'm still happy. And as I say, if I'm honest with you, I'd quite happily go back to being just a normal little club coach or just an instructor, just teaching at my own club, doing what I do, enjoying it. And because remember, the sports side of things is one thing, but I have a lot of love for my traditional guys. And you know what? Because sport can be quite nasty in the sense that, you've got to beat him and this club doesn't like that club and this too.
Yeah.
And I don't like hearing all that. I just want to blank the noise out. Whereas I go to my traditional guys, I have a laugh with these guys. What did you do at work today? I'll say, we did this, we did that. I've had a tough day. I want to beat the crap out of you. Like, let's go for it, mate. Let's have a good tear up. And, so to me, it's not about where I want to be. I just let life take me where it's got to be. So, and I'm happy and grateful, thankful for everybody that's come into my life. Even yourself today, Ben, just sitting and talking to you, I'm honoured. I've never thought I'd be on a podcast with somebody. So every day is just a blessing. So I have no goals for my future, just to be alive, be happy, and just being grateful, mate. That's it.
Fantastic. Well, Satinder, I've really, really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your story. It's just fantastic insight to your career to date. Wish you every success for the future. You thoroughly deserve it. And thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Ben, and just so grateful again. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Us.